to teach you one of those line construction strategies that is the basis for countless jazz lines. It consists of an easy two-step procedure that not only will teach you a new way to analyze and understand the thought process behind several great jazz lines, but it will also help you put your scales and arpeggios to use in a way that you can easily create an unlimited amount of new jazz vocabulary. I'm Richie Zellin, and I want to welcome you to the Jazz Guitar Channel. At the core of this two-step process is a very simple musical element known as the motif. According to one dictionary, a motif can be defined as a short succession of notes producing a single impression, or a brief melodic or rhythmic formula out of which longer passages can be developed. A motif is usually made up of 2 to 4 notes, occasionally 5. And for example, the most famous musical motif that comes to mind is by Beethoven, from Beethoven's Fifth. The next 2 elements needed to fulfill this two-step process need no introduction: scales and arpeggios. So, now that you are familiar with the 3 ingredients for this line construction recipe, let's begin by examining 2 examples of how they are combined by several great jazz musicians in the construction of their lines. This first line was played by Pat Martino. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now listen to the second line by Johnny Griffin. 1, 2, 3, 4. I know these 2 lines don't sound like much by themselves, but if you stick with me to the end, I promise you'll understand the importance of the concepts I'm about to teach you in the context of an entire solo. Now, if you compare both notations, you'll see that in spite of being played over different chords, they both are based on the same architecture. And if you're wondering, how on earth do I determine this? Or what the hell are you talking about? All you have to do is look at the contour of each line. And the contour is the shape that results if we trace a line across all the note heads. In this case, you will see that the first half of each line consists of a straight contour. Whenever the contour consists of a straight line, either descending or ascending, it is most likely a scale or arpeggio. In this case, both lines consist of an arpeggio because they are ascending in thirds for the most part. In the case of a scale, it would instead be in stepwise motion. Now let's do the same thing for the second half. Notice that in contrast, the second half of both lines consists of a wavy contour. And this therefore is not a scale or arpeggio, but instead a 2-beat melodic cell, or what we can refer to as the motif, which in turn is the heart of the line. The motif is an independent musical statement and can stand on its own. The arpeggio is simply appended to create added motion and extend the line. And in the case of these 2 lines, the arpeggio is acting as a pickup to the motif. Now, the interesting thing is that we can reverse the order of the motif and the arpeggio. In other words, place the motif first and then the arpeggio second, and the line still works, melodically speaking. Listen to the first line, the Pat Martino line. 1, 2, 3, 4. Works great. Same case for the second line, the Johnny Griffin line. Here's the motif first this time. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's an example of a Dexter Gordon line in which he plays the motif and appends the arpeggio after it. 1, 2, 3, 4. So next, let me inverse the motif by placing it second and having the arpeggio lead up to it instead. And notice how the line still works. 1, 2, 3, 4. So from these examples, you should be able to deduce this easy two-step procedure to construct a line. Step 1, select a 2 to 5 note motif that preferably takes up half of a measure. Step 2, append the corresponding scale or arpeggio to the other half. This can be ascending or descending. But wait, there's lots more to learn, so stick with me because next I'm going to show you 2 additional variations of this procedure, and then I will show you how I apply this information and construct lines over a well-known standard. And I will also be showing you some simple motifs that can serve as the basis for you to create your lines. But for now, let me proceed by stating that there are actually 4 ways to construct a line by appending an arpeggio or scale to an existing motif. I showed you the first 2 variations, which consist of arpeggio first and motif second, followed by motif first and arpeggio second. And before I continue, let me just clarify that this concept is not what is conventionally known as motif development. That's something different and a lot more complex. Okay, so with that disclaimer out of the way, next let's look at a Keith Jarrett line in which he instead uses the scale first as a pickup to the motif. 1, 2, 3, 4. And for the 4th variation, let's look at 2 more lines. This first one is by Herbie Hancock and demonstrates the 4th variety. Motif followed by scale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's another line showing the same procedure, this time by Hank Mobley. 1, 2, 3, 4. If we compare the 2 lines, we can see that they are based on the same contour architecture. The only difference is that the scale portion in Herbie's line ascends while Hank's descends. Again, a wavy versus linear contour should come in handy in the future when you analyze a transcribed solo in order to better understand the architecture of a line. And keep in mind that the combinations in this study are just one of many concepts employed. You will also come across measures that are either wavy or linear in their entirety. So as promised, next let me show you how you can apply this 2-step procedure to an entire solo. And I will constrain myself to using only the 4 variations we've explored just to show you what a good musical result you can obtain if it's done properly. That said, most soloists would normally include many other resources. So I am going to resort to the first 16 measures of the true and tried autumn leaves, which everyone is familiar with. For step 1, I am going to play only the motifs I have picked for the solo. And notice how simple they are. Most of them consist of 4 notes, usually 8th notes. Typically they are chord tones and extensions with enclosures or other approach note concepts. And in this demonstration, I will play each motif at the beginning of each measure. Keep in mind that this won't sound like an actual solo. It is a means to an end. In the second step, you will see how I append an arpeggio or scale either before or after each one of these motifs. Before I show you the completed autumn leaves, I want you to know that as usual I have a special study package you can download with all the examples from this lesson and a few added ones too. The PDF includes regular notation and tab for all the examples, as well as a detailed analysis of each motif and the appended scale or arpeggio in the autumn leaves solo. I also include MP3s of everything, and it is available for download for a small contribution from jazzguitar.richiezelland.com/premium, and you'll find it under the mini courses section. Okay, let's complete step 2. Append the corresponding scale or arpeggio to the other half. Here we have the finished product, and you will see where in each measure I used the motif and if I combined it with a scale or arpeggio. By the way, the PDF download includes the full analysis and tab of both autumn leaves versions. It is my experience that once you know your scales and arpeggios, the time invested in following a jazz language-oriented procedure such as this one versus, say, just learning licks out of context will actually help you reach your goal as a fluent improviser much quicker and with better overall results. So if you're interested in learning the language of jazz in depth, I want you to know that I have a great online course called the Bebop Guitar Improv Series, which features hundreds of videos and 6 books which will guide you step by step in taking your improvisation skills to the next level. For more info, visit bebopguitar.richiezelland.com. As usual, I appreciate your comments, likes, and welcome your questions. And if this is your first time on the Jazz Guitar channel and you found this lesson helpful, please be sure to subscribe. I look forward to bringing you another info-filled lesson next week. But until then, be sure to practice, practice, practice. Stay safe, and may peace be with you. Meanwhile, here's another video I recommend that you watch. Enjoy!